This is Angelica Francis with WYDK Talk Radio, and I'm coming to you today to share something with you, our audiences. We've been having ongoing discussions about the abuse of the elderly and disabled in specialized housing, and we're doing a full 6-week series about a lot of the things that I've experienced, and also allowing people who normally would not have a voice have a chance to speak up and speak out about their experiences and what's going on. A lot of our series is directed more specifically around a specific organization because it's the one that involves me in my life and affects our shows and affects everything that I do, both personally and business-wise, especially since we've had a lot of illegal entries and equipment damaged and stolen. So in explaining to our viewers and listeners and what's been going on, we're also expounding more and taking a more positive approach, because it's easy to gripe and complain about legitimate things to complain about, but we need solutions. No matter how bad a situation is, you still always need to have some form of remedy. And we need to present plausible, realistic solutions. Again, our programs are about real people, real problems, real solutions. And this is a very real problem. It's actually an epidemic in the United States and globally. And we need to present solutions and remedies as well as the problems that exist. So this is the first petition I have ever in my life have written. I've signed many a petition through the years, but I've never written one. And forgive me if my voice sounds groggy. I get hoarse a lot recently. There's a lot of toxins and things that I'm exposed to at this location. So my voice goes in and out, so my apologies. And I apologize ahead of time if I have to clear my throat several times so that I can actually speak, because I am losing my voice as I'm speaking. Sorry. Okay, and I don't have a cold. So this site is called Change.org. It's one of the oldest and one of the most well-known petition sites for online petitions. And there are 2 other sites that we're going to be posting our petitions on as well. In this particular situation, we're writing 3 completely different petitions because each petition needs to address a very specific set of needs. And this is the first one that's been completed, and it was completed just a couple of days ago, so we'll be circulating this. And as you can clearly see, it says, "End the abuse of elderly and disabled in specialized housing." And you see my name and my little picture right there. And we've just begun to circulate it, so we have 4 supporters so far. Our goal is to reach 10,000 signatures. We need these people in the city, state, and federal government agencies to know that this is something that a lot of people are deeply concerned about. This is something that people care and want to make a difference in. So we need as many signatures on these petitions as possible. Now again, this first petition is more of a generalized one, as in it speaks to more of the direct needs, and I'm going to read it to you. For one, we begin explaining that 1 in 5 American adults has a disability, and everyone who lives long enough will become elderly. And it's very common for people who are elderly to also be disabled. And if this doesn't affect you, then it will impact someone that you know and love. 1 in 5. You can't have 5 people in a room without someone having visual problems, hearing problems, mobility problems, which are things like being able to walk, stand on your own, go up and down stairs. A lot of people don't realize how many things are counted as a disability. Now, everybody doesn't have to go into disability housing and be on disability because of disabilities. It's only when those disabilities become so prevalent in your life where they greatly affect everything that you do. So you're no longer able to work or be able to work consistently, so that you're constantly having pain and problems with this issue. But nonetheless, people with back problems, people with still suffer from a disability. And so I want to kind of change the perspective and the way people look at disabilities, because more people have them than you realize. We hereby demand that city, state, and federal agencies work with the tenants of disabled and elderly housing to ensure that their concerns and complaints regarding their places of residence are properly addressed. The plethora of unfit living condition breaches many serious laws that must be upheld. In many cases, these places are allowed to self-govern, which means any reports of issues with the conditions, issues with the staff and their attitudes and how they're behaving with the people who live there are reported directly to the company themselves before any information is given out to the governing city, state, and federal agencies. The problem with this is very real because it's something that we've continually had to deal with. I recently, in November, went to court to file a restraining order because a lot of things, illegal accesses have been stolen, not just from my apartment, but almost every tenant in the building has complained for years about the thefts. And the person who is stealing from us has keys to our apartments. We live in a security building, so you have to be able to have a pass key to even get into the building. No one else can enter. Then you have to get past our steel doors. They cannot be pried. They're special doors. They're very heavy doors, and you're not going to pry those doors open. And in my case, I had an outdoor lock also on my bedroom. So they had to get into the building, they had to get into my apartment, and then get into my bedroom. Initially, I had given management a set of keys to my bedroom because it was a requirement for fire reasons and things like that. And I had to change it when thefts kept occurring in my room and no one else had a key to my room except him and I. And I realized who it was. So I changed the lock. Then there have been break-ins where my door, because it's not a steel door to my bedroom, has been pried open, and we have pictures and videos of that. And actually a hole put all the way through the door where someone could physically reach their hand in to the back of the doorknob and open up the door. And I had been reporting the situation, but they said that when we got to court, there had been no reports. There had been no reports by the other tenants. There had been no reports by myself, which was a lie. There was a period of time where every week, almost every tenant in the building kept reporting. Anything small that can easily be picked up and walked away with: jewelry, money, cell phones, video games, handheld video game systems, small items, tools, small electronics, things like that, kept walking away. Groceries, I can't count how many times I just went shopping and half of my groceries are gone before the afternoon because I had to leave for doctor's appointments or do other things, and I'd come back and half my things that I just purchased, nobody ate anything. And many of the times it's been since I'm here alone, so there's nobody else here. And they lied. They lied, said there were never any complaints made, and there never been any reports. So these types of places cannot self-govern themselves, because any maintenance or any type of issues that you complain about, if they're not directly addressed to a city, state, and federal agencies, and I think all three should simultaneously be notified. That way there's a major check and balance system in place. And this can be easily done. It doesn't take a major undertaking, which city, state, and government agencies would make a whole big spiel out of, and it'll be too costly and it's not effective, and that's not the case, because they can have online forms set up for each facility, and whenever the tenants need to make a complaint, whether it's maintenance, whether it's the behavior or the treatment of the people working there, it sends a copy of it to the location, city, state, and federal agencies. Mailboxes can be routed directly to a specific folder for each location. So if too many reports and complaints are coming from one specific location, then it needs follow-up. Otherwise, it would just need monitoring. You weed out the frivolous, because there will be some, and the more serious concerns would go into a folder specific to that location, and red flags would go up when a certain amount of, especially if it's repeated, the same type of issue over and over again, where the agencies can step in and make sure that something is being done about it. And so it wouldn't take a huge amount of resources or manpower to accommodate this. A lot of it can be done easily electronically. And it would just be a matter of making sure the tenants have access to a means, because you have to have access to a computer, to send these complaints. And most people's cell phones are smartphones now, but again, you're dealing with people with disabilities and limited capabilities at times. So there would have to be some type of something in place to make sure that these people are able to file the complaints or reports. Whether it be some form of a social worker that would come and check on things, every couple of months, no less than quarterly, and get everybody's complaints and sit there and put them into the computer for them, or more often. But it's a doable remedy. It's a very doable remedy. And then no one can lie and cover up what is really going on. And the forms don't have to be major difficult. They can be very user-friendly, where basically all I have to do is type their name and address in, and the system can already have the names and addresses of everybody entered in who live at the specific location, so they can just let them know which unit they're in and what's going on. But the bottom line is that city, state, and federal agencies need to meet with the people and talk with the people. One of the situations that we deal with here is the bullying and the threatening, and we'll evict you, or it'll be worse for you after if you say anything. And the people are so terrified to say anything and speak up for themselves. They don't want to be homeless. They don't want to be brutalized and bullied. And a lot of times in these cases, people who are bullies and very mean to the people are in these jobs. I guess it makes them feel empowered to have control over someone else's life, but it's wrong and it's abuse, and something needs to be done about it. Now, the specific location that I'm personally dealing with is Skyforce Acres apartment complex. It's a facility for the disabled and elderly, primarily disabled, and it is run by a company called Accessible Space Incorporated. And they are a prime example of maltreatment, neglect, and blatant disregard for human life. Several people have passed away here, and the way things are handled, it's pretty bad. We've had issues with mold and radon gas ongoing for a long period of time, far longer than it ever should have been allowed. This building, prior to being built, had already a clause that every 2 years they were supposed to check for radon because of the location where it was built. And this year is the first time that they're checking. And that's because we've made complaints and tenants tested their own units themselves and found very high levels. Well, I've lived here 9 years, and I came a year after the building had been built and opened. So this place has been in existence and functioning with tenants for 10 years. And they were supposed to be checking every 2 years. There have been numerous huge water leaks on the property. The building is heated by hot water, and the hot water pipes go overhead in certain apartments and hallways and areas in the building. And there's been many leaks where the waters run down the walls all the way down to the first floor from the second floor. In my case, my apartment is on the first floor, so it would just run all over the apartment. I've had a water leak under my sink for at least 4 years that has never been, a plumber's never come out to fix or do anything about. What the maintenance man, excuse me, my voice is going out again, Steve Martin did was take a piece of Teflon tape on the hot water. I don't know what you call it, but it comes from the wall and goes to the sink where the hot water comes out of. And it's a very bumpy, springy or coilish type of a tubing. And all he did was wrap some Teflon tape on there. Well, Teflon didn't get into the nooks and crannies, and it didn't stop the leak. Instead of the water just spraying out like it initially was doing, it just ran down the tubing to the wall, and that's where it leaked. So, or that's where the water pooled. It caused a lot of mold in the wall and all the way down the wall. And I share walls, my apartment, with the recreational room. So after a point, the mold smell and issues with the mold started permeating that area. And a lot of the tenants are on oxygen. They have breathing problems. Excuse me. And, sorry, I have breathing problems. And this hoarseness is part of being exposed to the toxic mold and stuff in my apartment. And I lose my voice constantly. That's why I haven't been doing the radio programs. So, my apologies. These things have been being reported constantly and falling on deaf ears. Also, we have an issue here where city government haven't been doing their jobs. And it's a major conflict of interest in this town because it's a small town. And have you ever watched the movies where the mayor and the deputy and the Supreme Court justice and all these major jobs are held by the same person or several people in the same family? Or everybody grew up together because it's such a small town. Well, Tahoe is a very, very small town. The majority of the people who have homes here don't live here, and their houses are only used for vacations and holidays. But of the people who actually occupy the space, it's very, very small. And a lot of people locally really worked hard to be able to put housing. This is the only facility here for people with disabilities. And they, from what I've heard, went through so much to get a facility built for this location. And I completely 1000% understand and empathize with that. But the people they put in charge of the facility are very bad people and do not care about the health and well-being of the people who live there. And because these people also hold positions in many different city government and local government positions in the hospital, and they have a lot of clout here. So to hide their embarrassment about what's going on here, they've been interfering and covering up, and it's been a conflict of interest trying to get anything accomplished because they don't want the liability. When there are ethics involved on a far greater level than embarrassment and worrying about liability, what about human life and quality of human life? And what kind of a human being would put such trivial things, again, like ego and reputation and worrying about liability over doing something about making sure the people are properly protected and their needs are being met? Very vulnerable people. So there's a lot of conflicts of interest here, and that's why it should be city, state, and federal agencies notified at the same time, because a situation like this couldn't have taken place. If the local government is all in cahoots together and they're all working together and they're all part of this, then it automatically would have stopped them from being able to not act and react appropriately in this situation had all of the complaints and all of the incidents that have taken place here been reported on a federal, state, and city level. And I'm not saying, I'm not putting anybody down. I'm just saying that this whole situation should have been handled better and differently. There have been several deaths here, especially within the last 3 years, that if it's not the cause of, it has certainly contributed to the ailments and the deaths that have taken place here at this location. And things like this cannot be allowed to continue. They need to be addressed and effectively addressed, because again, very vulnerable people suffer the consequences of someone else's inadequacies or not doing their job, oversights. There's a common term, falling through the cracks, and it's unacceptable. All facilities for people with the disabled and elderly get federal grants and funding, and city and state, and that they're giving a very large amount of money to provide suitable living conditions for senior citizens and the disabled. Yet, in many, many cases, and not just with this company and not just at this location, but again, this is a national and global epidemic where they're basically slumlords. And the very least that they can provide for the tenants is provided. Yet they're getting all these funds to do so. And so this needs to be addressed because people are living in unfit living conditions. And again, like in our case, mold, radon, bullies, thefts, illegal entries, and so on and so on and so on. And it is the obligation of city, state, and federal agencies to do something about these conditions. And one, we want to make certain they know about it. In our particular case, I personally suspect that a lot of the information, until recently, never made it to the appropriate channels because it was blocked and they were lied to about what was really going on here. And now that we're making the photos and pictures and videos and documents public, there's no more lying, there's no more covering it up. But everyone doesn't have access to the same resources. In my case, before the car accident and before I had to come here, I was a radio and talk show host. You know, we have TV programs and other things. And for the longest period of time, I was doing my best not to involve my work life with my personal life. Because as soon as I was healed up enough, I was going to go back to my work world in life. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice again. And I didn't want the two associated at all. It's hard enough in this world being a female in the field that I'm in. And I have to work my butt off to be accepted and to be acknowledged on my level for the work that I do. And to be a disabled person, there's so many stigmas and so much prejudice. Something as a woman of color, so both being a woman and a woman of color, there were enough obstacles to deal with. But something I found out is that people with disabilities are treated even worse than people of different ethnic groups. They're treated like throwaways, cast-outs, useless, worthless people. They're talked to and treated that way. And that's something I'd never seen before or experienced before I was in this position. Sometimes I think God allowed this to happen because He needed someone like me who has the ability to speak out, who has the ability and know-how and resources and connections to express what goes on in a place like this and what happens and how people are being treated, and to bring it to the light and to bring it out into the open and to give people a voice. Not my voice, but to give them the opportunity to speak for themselves about what's going on and how they've been treated by the very agencies that are supposed to help them who are abusing them. So there needs to be a stronger check and balance system. And again, we don't just present the problem, we're presenting very viable solutions, or at least steps in the right direction. So one of the things that we're demanding in the petition is that they meet with the people in the disabled and elderly housing twice a year minimum. I think it should be quarterly. And talk to them about what's going on in detail. so that these things can be addressed. And in these meetings, the management and cannot be present because, again, people need a vehicle in which they can express themselves and speak what is happening to them without feeling threatened or bullied, or this person knows I said this or that and there's going to be retaliation. There's so much retaliation over the smallest of things that people are terrified. One of the women who I had subpoenaed, because she's lived here as long as I have, she's one of the original tenants. There's only a few of us left, and unfortunately the rest have died. Only 1 or 2 people have moved out of the building out of 17 units. All the rest of the apartments, we've got 5 new tenants. That's because the people who were in their apartments died. And they all died within a very short period of time, so that's not a good thing at all. But she was so afraid of speaking about what she knew that she put herself in the hospital a few days before the hearing. I mean, she literally made herself that sick from worry because she was scared of what was going to happen in retaliation for her speaking. Everybody has a right to speak. Sorry. Everybody has a right to express themselves about what's going on in their lives. And we need to empower these people. We need to empower. And when I say these people, I'm included. But we need to be able to empower people to be able to speak up about what's happening to them, especially when abuse is involved. Fines and sanctions need to be imposed immediately when conditions aren't met. It is so hard going through attorneys and trying to get people to represent you and represent more than one person and trying to get any kind of help. Most people don't have the resources to hire attorneys. And again, we're talking about disabled and elderly. They don't have, a lot of them don't have the mobility, the finances, etc. And they need to make it easier for them to get restitution for being abused, for having to live in unfit conditions for a prolonged period of time. The things that they would get in court, but they shouldn't have to go to court for certain types of things. It should be an automatic, if this isn't done and isn't done in a timely manner, instead of a person having to go through a long, drawn-out court proceeding, there should be something in effect or established that specific things have specific fines without them having to go through all of the trouble and wear and tear mentally, spiritually, and physically to try to find appropriate representation, to get all the documents and things that need to be done. There needs to be a system in place that compensates appropriately. You know, people's personal belongings being stolen and damaged. I've had several things destroyed and damaged in my apartment. Not taken, just damaged. Whether it's when they're in here banging into something and breaking something, or legitimately in here, or illegitimately in here, just in retaliation because they're angry, because I spoke up. And I catch a ton of hell, but I don't care. This is more important. And again, I'm not the scary, flighty type. I never have been. In what I do, in the life that I've lived through the years, I was a rancher. We dealt with mountain lions and huge packs of coyotes. They complain about the 3 or 4 at a time they see here. I would see 30, 40 at times together, groups, trying to ascend upon our animals. And if we didn't scare them off, run them off, or whatever the case may be, they were going to be eaten or maimed. And so even if you're afraid, rattlesnakes, oh my gosh, and I'm terrified of snakes, but I've had to catch more than my share, because if I didn't, either my children or our animals would be injured. And so we could not allow them, once they came into certain areas and zones of the property, remain there. So they had to be removed and disposed of so they couldn't come back. So you learn to face even your deepest fears and stand up to them. And I've never liked bullies. And I've been standing up to bullies since I was a child. Now that I'm a senior citizen, I'm not about to start backing down to bullies. Even if that means my life is coming to an end, which, because of what I've been exposed to, may be anyway. No matter what we do, there is a very likelihood that it's too late to save me, because I've contracted lymphoma from the prolonged exposure to 3 of the most toxic molds there are. My apartment's infested with it, and they know a year before I had it tested, because for an entire 9 months we tried to get them to have someone come out and have it tested, and they refused to do so. So then, and when I say we, I'm talking about myself and my attorneys. When they refused to do so, I researched and got a hold of environmental health and other agencies that gave me information to where to go, who to contact, so they could come out and have the testing done. And it's been 2 years since we've had the test results from that. So they've known about it, as well as in my particular location, we haven't had proper heat here. My room was the only room in the apartment that would get almost all the heat dumped into it. It's right beside the water heater, and the piping goes right through the ceiling in my bedroom. Then as it dispersed out into the other areas, it just wasn't adequate. And so either my room had to be a sauna just for there to be enough heat in the living room to where we didn't have to wear our coats and jackets year round. And we're in Tahoe, so we get 8 to 10 months of winter. And even in the summer, August, it will snow. It is June 7th, and just last week we had a full-on snow. It snows any day of the year here, and even on the warm days, it still drops down to 50, 40, 30 degrees at night, even on the warm days in the summer. So temperature is a very big issue here, and having 30 and 40 degree temperatures, which have been documented in this apartment, inside, when you come in out of the cold, you can't come in and get warm. You come in out of the cold and to a cold apartment. I have 42 pieces of metals, pins, screws, staples, anchors, on the right side of my body from a major car accident. We were teed, and I was hit from the right side. I was in the front passenger seat. And when the metal gets cold, the pain is excruciating. So the level of pain I've had to tolerate, the effects on my heart and my blood pressure and other organs, because it affects my heart and my blood pressure, has been tremendous. And it's been this way since I moved here. The issues with the apartment were from onset of the building being built. Again, I'm one of the original tenants here. And I'd been complaining about it from the beginning, and they didn't even attempt to do anything to fix the problem until I contacted Senator Barbara Boxer 6 years later, after trying to go through local agencies and no one doing anything about it. And all Accessible Space Incorporated, which we also call ASI, so you'll hear me refer to them as ASI quite often, would lie and say it's fixed, it's fixed, it's fixed. No one would come out and verify it. And when they did, they still didn't do anything about it. Like Bill Potts with the South Lake Tahoe City inspectors, building inspectors. He's known about all of this from the very beginning. He's been in there. And then they only do their inspections. The 2 or 3 months of warm weather that we get here is the only time they would do their inspections. They would never come out in the cold or bad weather to see just how serious the conditions are here. And that should have never been allowed. That put a strain and interfered with my healing from the surgeries and things that I had tremendously. I would have healed so much better. But it's impossible to do your physical therapy exercises when scar tissue does not yield and move, and it is not as pliable as muscle tissue is. And when it's cold, it's not pliable at all. So it made everything that I had to do and go through, and every moment of every day, arduous, a chore, painful, unnecessarily, on levels that should have never existed. And so I'm telling my story and letting people know, look, if that kind of stuff can happen to someone like me who knows how to speak out, knows how to reach out to agencies and organizations, who has connections everywhere, including the White House, direct people I can contact, and this kind of stuff is happening with someone like me. People who don't have access to any of those resources don't stand a chance at getting the help they need. And like I said, the extensive exposure to the toxins and toxic mold have caused some really critical, serious, potentially terminal ailments within me. So no matter what we do in this situation, I may not survive. I believe that I will. I'm not going to stop trying and doing everything within my abilities and resources to beat this. But the reality of the situation is, if these are some of my final acts and deeds and things that I'm doing on this earth, then I want to make a difference. I want to make sure what caused my death never happens to anyone else. Very rarely, how often does a person have a chance to directly address and make sure that they are brought to justice, their killers? And I have a unique position and opportunity to do so. Now, of course, hopefully, with God's help and with my training and the training of many others in alchemy, Ayurvedic medicine, nutrition, herbal medicine, as well as regular standard medicine, we'll be able to beat this and get me healthy and well again. But if that's not the case, then I'm going to do everything within my powers and ability to make sure that the last thing I did on this earth was to help others like myself never to have to go through what I went through ever again. So, again, this is one of 3 petitions that we're putting out. One of the other petitions is going to directly address city and state agencies that should have acted, who have had knowledge the entire time about all of the conditions and what's been going here, because I made sure, and I've already placed the documents and the correspondences between me and these agencies in federal agencies' hands, but to make sure that they're held accountable for their part in all of this, because this could not have continued if any of them would have got off their butts and done their jobs. And they didn't. They looked the other way. They allowed this to continue. So they need to be held accountable, because anytime it is your job to uphold the law and you don't, then you're equally guilty with breaking the law and the consequences that came from those laws being broken. In this case, the death of several people and the very critical illness of many people, then they need to be held accountable. And we're going for criminal charges to be brought against all of them. And again, all the information is already in many federal agencies' hands, all the way back to Washington. So all the sabotage with my computer equipment and that they've been doing and coming to my place and trying to erase my computers and destroy my data, it's fruitless because the information isn't stored here. Duh. I'm not an idiot. And it's in the hands that it needs to be in. So no matter what is done, I've had the cable unscrewed on the brakes of my car, and all this icy. We've had a record winter and snowy weather. If I had have panicked, if I'd have been the scary, panicky type, I would probably be seriously injured or dead right now. I've had the hood of my car unlatched. So when I was driving, we have a lot of very steep hills and cliffs all over here. And had it opened, it would have caused a car accident. It lifted, but it didn't open fully. And I was able to get to safety and lock it down properly. I've had the front grille of my car kicked out. I've had my steering wheel, a big X carved into the steering wheel, and FU carved into the steering wheel of my vehicle. There's been a lot of threats. I've had something toxic poured into the water filter. I have an 8-stage water filter, a countertop one, in my kitchen. And fortunately, it was one hell of a good water filter, so nothing made it through to me. But something very caustic, and we're going to have it examined and find out exactly what was used, because they're angry that I'm speaking up and speaking out and trying to threaten me. And it's very difficult to fight a battle when you're standing in the backyard of those that you're battling with, because they have access to my apartment, they have access to me, they have access to my car. But letting the whole world know, and my family doesn't play, and I'm from a huge family, and I'm loved. So there's a lot of people that are just now learning about what's been going on here. They're not happy, and that's all I have to say about that. There are a lot of people, and I'm naming names now, because if you're going to get this down and ugly, and okay, if we're going to do it, then we need everybody to know what's going on. But back to the petition. This is a very real situation. And if it wasn't, they wouldn't be going through such extreme measures to try to shut me up and make me be quiet and threaten me, trying to find ways to threaten me to back down, when all I have asked for myself and all that I have presented for anyone else is basic human needs. Ice freezes at 34 degrees. So to have 30 and 40 degree temperatures inside of your apartment is absolutely unacceptable. And state and federal law, the temperature has to be able to be maintained at no less than 70 degrees for human inhabitation. So many major violations. One of the people who passed away was an elderly man. His name was Tom Glenn, and he was a sweetheart. He was in a wheelchair, and one winter his heater went out. He had no heat for 3 months while they decided the cheapest way to fix it. 3 months this man had no heat in his apartment. So what did he do? He used his stove to heat his apartment because he was freezing. Again, an elderly man in a wheelchair, and this is something I personally witnessed, not hearsay. And for 3 months, he had his stove on. His burners were all on, and then his oven was on with the door open to heat his apartment to stay warm. And he had to stay fairly close to it, because if he ventured away, the rest of the apartment, it wasn't strong enough to completely heat the apartment. And if his blanket would have caught on fire, if anything would have caught on fire, not only would he have died, but the majority, I'm the only tenant in this building. I'm in the building with the office and what's considered the recreation room, and there's a laundry room in here, etc., and the maintenance room. And then there's the maintenance guy's apartment and my apartment. And the reason for that is I'm in the only 2-bedroom apartment, and I had children. So that's why I'm over here, when all the other units are single 1-bedroom units. So all the other lives of all the other tenants was put in jeopardy. They could have died from a fire. And there's been many other incidents equally as appalling as that have taken place. Again, I'm one of the original tenants, and I've seen everything, or mostly everything, that has taken place here. And I'm not afraid to speak up about it. I've taken pictures and videos and documented quite a bit. And there's other tenants that are witness to a lot that have gone on here. It's just that they have been bullied and afraid to speak up. But the more I speak up and speak out, the more they're getting and finding the courage to speak up and speak out. When I took Steve Martin to court because of the legal entries in my apartment, and he started getting bold where he was coming in my apartment at night, every time I left my apartment, he was in my face yelling at me about something. And no matter what I do or don't do, you don't have the right to be in my face or yelling at me. And again, bully tactics. You know, all this stuff started getting really super nasty once I filed a federal lawsuit against them, which didn't take place until after close to 7 years of dealing with all this foolishness with no remedy, with no one doing anything about what was happening here. So they really, really started getting nasty with me, and they do it with everybody to try to intimidate them. But again, I'm not an easily intimidated person. And that bites their ass. I mean, they really can't stand that about me. They'll just have to get over it, because we're just getting started. All this time I've been avoiding a confrontation with them. Now, bring it. All of my people and everybody all my contacts everywhere from Washington to California know what's going on now. So, if a fight they want, they'll get it. But in this particular case and situation and circumstance, what we need to do is get these petitions out there and to the right authorities. And I don't know if you noticed at the bottom of the page, it has the names of the different offices that this petition will be sent to. So we need as many signatures as we can get, because this is a very, very serious, very, very bad situation that has to be dealt with. And there's going to be more than one petition, because we want charges brought against these people. It's not enough. No more slaps on the wrist and slaps on the hand. People have died. Too many people have died. And we don't even know the magnitude or the scope of how many people have died, all in all. We just know about the ones that are here and in our immediate location. And then we've heard about a second location where it is said, because it hasn't been verified, that 8 more people have died, and 2 under suspicious circumstances. They were probably people like me who tried to do something about it, because you see how they've been threatening me, and if they could have brought serious harm to me, they would have. So this needs to be addressed, and no more dealing with this on a mild level. We need to full out, all out, do whatever needs to be done to put an end to this foolishness, because this should have never been allowed to go on as long as it has. So I'm counting on all my listeners, viewers, friends of friends, family, which my family is massive, and also anyone who cares about what's happening here to sign these petitions and get the word out that no, we the people are not going to stand for such a huge injustice and look the other way. We still have power as individuals, and it doesn't matter who's in office. The people have the power, and the people need to stand up for what is right. And I'm believing in you guys, so show me that I'm not wrong, and I want to hear your voices. I want to see your faces. I want to see your signatures. My whole life's work has always been to help other people. And we may be coming to the end of that life. Show me that all my work and all my efforts, all these years, has not been in vain. This is Angelica Francis with WYDK Talk Radio, signing out.